All right, good morning. How's everyone doing? Karibuni sana. Good to see you all here. Apologies for starting off a couple of minutes late. We did need to figure out a couple of things, but hope you're well. This 14th day of October, the year of our Lord 2024. Good to see lots of people streaming in, which is good. Karibuni sana, and also online on our YouTube. Karibuni sana. So for the sake of guys who are new to me and to us, John Bogo is my name. I'm a trader with Afriforex. Afriforex is a trading unit, like we always say, so it's not a one-man show. So we also do have Mitch. He is here. He is working in the back office. So in case you do have any questions, feel free to ask them, both on the Q&A section and also on the chat box. But we always do prefer that you do ask your questions on the Q&A section, so that at least I can end up looking at those questions, but towards the very tail end of this webinar. But like we always say, you don't really need to wait until the very end. You still can ask your questions, even as the webinar does end up progressing on. So we're going to jump straight into looking at the watch list for Friday in comparison to what we had. You can see on Friday, that's what it was looking like. Today, we only have a couple of changes. I think the New Zealand dollar and gold, which have switched sides. So feel free to take note of that. This is what the watch list is going to be looking like today. So we can look at some NZDs that we did have on Friday that unfortunately did not make it to our watch list this morning. So we'll start off with this one. This is the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. So for this one, on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. You can clearly see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. And in the morning, price was somewhere within here. I had pointed out maybe we did need to see something, within this region right here before looking for the buying opportunities. You can see that the market bounced off this region. This was during the Frankfurt London session, came back in, but you can see that at around 4:30. Price was back in within this region right here. And you can see that there were some attempts by the sellers to actually break to the downside, which were actually unsuccessful. And you can see that the market did actually take off to the upside, actually came back in within here. But remember that I had also pointed out that there was a region somewhere within here where we could have gotten some issues. And you can see that on the first attempt, when the market came up, you can see that the sellers within this region did actually react. The next time when the market came back in, a bit of a hold, but at least the buyers were able to break all the way till the top right there. But unfortunately, not a currency pair that we will be watching out for today. So the next one, this is the New Zealand dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, on Friday, watching out to see whether we could have gotten buys. You can clearly see the three regions right there that I had pointed out, and also an illustration of what to expect. This one was a bit messy. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the price coming back in within here. And of course, when the market broke above here, you can see that the market was just holding within this region here. There was really nothing. So it's like these sellers within this region were really giving the buyers issues within there. So not the clearest of opportunities, in as much as the market did go up, but not really what we expected to see. So the next one, this is the New Zealand dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, on Friday, we're watching out to see whether we could have gotten some buys. Clearly can't see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. And you can see during the London session, or even when we start off at a time like this during the Frankfurt session, price was somewhere within here. Had pointed out there was a scenario within there that could find the market maybe reacting, and it did, because you can see that price came back in within this region right here before the market took off to the upside. This was still during the US session. You can see that the market actually broke above this region to the upside, although catching that trade possibly could have been a bit tricky, maybe unless, reading it on a smaller time frame. So last but not least for review, we do have the euro against the New Zealand dollar. So for this one, on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. And you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. Also an illustration of what to expect. You can see that there was a fight that was going on within this region right here before the sellers did really kick in. So you can see during the London session, price was holding there. During the US session from around 4:30, you can see that that's when the market did actually start its move to the downside and at least did tap within this region right here. So unfortunately, also not a currency pair that we will be watching out for today. So that's pretty much it in terms of the currency pairs that we did have on Friday that unfortunately did not make it to our watch list today. Of course, today being a Monday, we're also not really going to be looking at any screenshots, but of course, feel free to send them in to us. Definitely, we will be looking at them tomorrow. So our contact details should be there on the chat box. And also, if you do have any issues, feel free to also reach out to us. We will see how best we can end up helping you. So you can't see the watch list for today right there. So the 14th of October, for the guys who've come in late, my digital calendar says that today is day 288. We do have 78 more days left before the end of the year. So we still do have at least a couple of days to end up covering ground and making sure that this year does end up counting. So this is what the watch list is going to be looking like. So we're going to be mixing and matching up the buys versus the sells. So we'll start off with the yen pairs, mixed and matched up with the currency pairs on the sell side, move on to the Australian dollar. Then we'll finish off with the Great British Pound pairs. And then, of course, last but not least, the indices and the commodities. So we'll start off with the US dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. So you can't see the three regions right there that I had pointed out, and also illustrations of what to expect. So Friday morning price was here. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the market breaking to the downside here. And you can't see that the market came back in all the way till the top, somewhere within this region here. But in as much as price came back there, unfortunately, you can't see that there was no push by any big seller within this region here. So unfortunately, there wasn't any sell on Friday. So today, the levels are the same. The market hasn't really gone far and beyond the regions that we're watching out for on Friday. So hopefully today we'll get hopefully some big seller showing up within this region here. And at least if that does end up happening, because we're still on this pullback, if that does happen and we see a struggle of the buyers, then we could definitely try to see whether we could get some selling opportunities on this one. So let's see what happens. Of course, if the sales, if we do take any sales within here, definitely we could target even all the way down within here. But this is a region where we will need to do some money management and also quite a number of minor SNRs that, we'll definitely need to watch out for on the way down. But hopefully if that big seller does end up showing up, we could get something similar to what happened here on Thursday, where we could get a nice big move coming to the downside. So let's see what happens. But remember right now, considering the fact that we're high up within that aggressive area, in case the market breaks and holds above that region to the upside, then unfortunately there will be no trade for us on the US dollar against the Japanese yen. So the next one, this is the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen. So for this one, on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities on this one as well. These were the three areas I had pointed out. And you can't see also an illustration of what we were expecting. Unfortunately, the market broke to the upside, and you can't see that it did actually hold to the upside of this area. So unfortunately, at that point in time, that meant that this currency pair was off our watch list. So today, we're going to still be trying to see whether we can get some sells. Let's see if we could get maybe the market pulling back in or some big seller showing up within this region at the top right here. If we do, then at least we could possibly try and see whether we could get some selling opportunities. You can see that the market went higher within this region on Friday. The sellers came in, but these are not the big sellers. The buyers are still quite adamant. And you can see that the sellers are still not quite yet in the market. So maybe there's a possibility you could find the market coming back in there before we do find, a big seller showing up before the buyers do struggle again. And you could find that before the market does all this, it's going to be maybe at around 4:30. So we'll just need to wait and see what does end up happening on this one. But of course, remember, in case the market breaks and holds above the red SNR to the upside, then unfortunately, at that point in time, that currency pair is going to be off our watch list. So the next one, this is the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sells. And you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. So Friday morning, price was here. I wanted to see whether we could have gotten the market coming back in within this region, maybe on some sort of a retest, and possibly the market holding to the downside. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. You can see that the market pulled around here, broke to the upside, and kind of held to the upside of this region. And you can see that even today, it's still fighting within this region, sometimes to the upside, sometimes to the downside. So for this one, there's definitely the same area that we're watching out for. In fact, all the three areas are more or less the same because, price has not really gone far and beyond the regions that we're watching out for. But let's see what happens. Hopefully, we could get the market holding within here and just watch out for the times. 10, 3, 4:30. Maybe we could possibly end up getting some good selling opportunity coming in on this one, somewhere within here. But considering the fact that the buyers have come in and there's a possibility if the market does actually hold above here, then I guess we could get the market possibly coming back in within this region here. And you could find that maybe the proper sales might actually happen off this region at the top right there. So let's just wait and see what the market does end up telling us. But also remember, the yens tend to be well correlated. So, I mean, you can see that on Friday, all of them were on the pullback going up. So if you see maybe one turning, have a look at the others. Hopefully, if you see that happening across all the yen pairs, then that's a good sign. It means that the big boys are definitely interested in the yen. So the next one, this is the euro against the Japanese yen. So for this one, we're trying to also see whether we could get sells. You can also see that this one was also on the pullback the whole of Friday. So the three areas I had pointed out, also illustrations of what to expect. Unfortunately, my expectations were not quite met. So you can see that the market came in within here. There was no sign of a big seller within there. And within this region right here, when the market came in, unfortunately, you can see that the market did actually go to the upside, but actually held to the upside. It's only today, during the Asian session, that the market is actually trying to actually come back in, within this region here. But we've adjusted the area just slightly, especially the one at the top. The other two are more or less the same, but the one at the top, just a slight adjustment, just to take into consideration the story of what has happened most recently. So adjusted it slightly higher. So this is the area we will be watching out for. So let's see what happens. You can see that the buyers are still quite adamant and the sellers are not yet quite in. So there's a possibility you could find the market might come back in within this region here. But at least if we do get the market actually holding to the downside, especially after maybe the next attempt, of the bar to break to the upside, then that might be good. We could possibly try and see whether we could get some selling opportunities. But also remember, just like we looked at the rest of the yens, if the market breaks and holds above that red SNR to the upside, then unfortunately at that point in time, there will be no trade for us. So last but not least, for the yen pairs, we do have the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. So this is a new entrant on our watch list. So we will be watching out to see whether we can get selling opportunities. So do watch out for those three areas right there. Right now, the market looks like it's just broken above this region, or rather it broke on Friday. It's come back in within here, some sort of a retest. If it does continue to hold above here, then there's a possibility you could find either the market could come back in here, or maybe somewhere till within this region here. There's a possibility maybe the sales could possibly happen off that area. So you could possibly also watch out for this minor SNR within this region here. But like I pointed out, watch out also for the rest of the yens. In case you see something on any of the other yens, then just make sure that you also do have a look at this one and possibly try see whether you could get the sales. But the reason why we have this area at the top and there's a large probability that price could come back in there is because if you look at the market structure of this one, we're actually in a range. So the best area to actually look for the sales is actually at the top of the range. So I mean, if the market comes back in within here, this sell definitely will give us way more profit potential, coming down to within this region. So let's see what happens on that one. And of course, the rest of the yens, like we've pointed out, and I guess that's pretty much it in terms of the yen pairs. So we're going to move on to the next set of currency pairs, which are going to be the AUD pairs. So we'll mix and match up the Australian dollar with everything on the sell side. So we'll start off with the Australian dollar against the US dollar. So for this one, on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buys. So you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. Friday morning, price was somewhere within here. I did talk about maybe price could actually break above here and we could look for the buys, but I had pointed out that don't look for the buys, especially when price was down within this region right here, because you didn't know if price was going to come back all the way to within this region. And you can see that there was a struggle that was going on within this area right here during the London session. During the US session, the market broke to the upside, but you can see that there wasn't much of a pullback. And you can see that when the market came back in, it's broken to the downside of this region. So it's more or less back in, more or less within the same area where it was on Friday morning. So this one, the levels are the same. So let's see what happens. Of course, the plan is also going to be the same. So the buyers are coming in, which is good. But let's see if we can get the market breaking and holding above this region to the upside. Then at least at that point in time, we could look for the buying opportunities. Right now, considering it's holding within this region, we're not too sure what the big boys could be up to. You could easily find that the market could come back in within this region right here. And I mean, if it does, then I guess it's just a matter of reading the story of what does end up happening, because you could find that maybe the proper buys could actually happen off this region, and at least we'll have way more profit potential to the upside. Because every time the buyers try to push the market off this area, you can see that they're not really being able to really make higher highs and higher lows. So it means that maybe there's a much better price that's possibly needed by the big boys. And that better price, there's a possibility it could be somewhere within this region here. So let's just wait and see what happens. But also remember, if the market breaks and holds below the red SNR to the downside, then unfortunately, at that point in time, there will be no trade for us. So the next one is the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, it's also a currency pair we had on Friday. We're watching out to see whether we could get buys. Can clearly see the three regions right there that I had pointed out, and also illustrations of what to expect. Of course, there was this expectation of price coming back in within here. Unfortunately, price couldn't, but you can see that the price is really held within this region and still holding within that area today. And of course, the other expectation was price breaking above here, holding above here, and possibly pushing to the upside. That did happen. And you can see that this was during the New York Stock Exchange open. But you can see that it's like the buyers ran out of steam. They broke the upside, pulled back in, but unfortunately, they just couldn't get past this region to the upside. And you can see that the sellers pushed the market back in. So for this one, not too bad in terms of what's happening right now. You can see that the buyers have pushed the market to the upside. The market is back in within here. So you could possibly find that maybe they could possibly end up making another attempt to push to the upside. And you can see that if you're looking for this trade, stop loss is about 12 pips and you stand to gain about 20. So the risk to reward is not really the best. Let's say if you get the trade somewhere within there and you're targeting high up within there. So unless maybe you end up reading the story of what does end up happening within here. Of course, this is the trade. If a 1:5 is good enough for you, then that's okay. For some of us, it's not really the best. What I would do is possibly read the story of what happens within this region on the 3-minute time frame, and maybe try bring that stop loss as close as possible as I can. But of course, not running the risk of getting stopped out, and you could find that the risk to reward might actually end up becoming a bit much better. So for this one, maybe just reading the detail on the 3-minute, then hopefully, if these buyers do actually end up coming in just like they've come in and pushed the market to the upside, hopefully we should see the market possibly at least coming back in within this region here. So let's see what happens on this one. Definitely looks like a good setup. Let's see if things do actually pick up during the London session. So the next one, this is the Australian dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buys, and you can't see the three regions that I had pointed out. So Friday morning price was here. Price went up. Then you can see that during the US session at 3, price was high up within this region. It came back in quite aggressively back within this region before taking off to the upside. Something similar to what we've seen on the New Zealand dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, at least the buy did work, although grabbing it within there possibly did need to be read on a smaller time frame, because you can see that on the 15-minute, the market just tapped within that area, then just reversed quite fast off that region to the upside. But at least the market did actually bounce off within here. We did have that expectation. So for this one, for today, I'm going to be trying to see whether we can get some buys. These are the 3 areas we will be watching out for. So you can take note of them. This one is almost similar to the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc, because you can see that the market has pulled back, come back in within this region, broke to the downside. Hopefully lots of sellers were incited, to start looking for sells within this region. And right now, considering the fact that the market has gone to the upside and it's actually holding within here, then I guess it's a matter of really just reading the story, on the smaller time frame, to really see what does end up happening. If you can get the buyers really coming in, really push up that stop loss, and hopefully we could actually end up getting the market going to the upside, at least targeting back in within this region. So also for this one, have a look and try see whether you can grab that. Of course, making sure that you also factor in your risk in as much as you're going to be jumping in on, or possibly looking to jump in on those 2 trades. So the next one, this is the euro against the Australian dollar. So for this one on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten sells. You can see the 3 regions that I had pointed out: aggressive, conservative, semi-aggressive, conservative. Friday morning, price was within this region. The buyers had just come up quite aggressively. We're expecting to possibly get some sort of a slowdown within here. You can see that during the London session, there was a big fight that was going on within this region right here. And you can see that during the US session, that's when the market really started to push to the downside. You can see that at least the market did come back in within here, attempted to break to the downside, but it's more or less holding within this region here. So for this one, the levels are still more or less the same. So we will be waiting to see whether we can get maybe the market pulling back to this region right here in the middle, because right now, based on where the market is, it's not really the best of areas, you know, because the buyers can easily end up reacting off this region right here. And we're not too sure whether they actually end up doing that. So let's just wait and see. If they do react, then at least we can get the sells here. In case they don't, then at least it's better to actually wait and see if you can get the breach. On the pullback, you can definitely get that sell coming in. So for this one, just a bit of patience. Let's see what happens. But also remember the red SNR at the top. It's a bit of a long shot, but it's possible. Price can also come back in within that region if the big boys do actually need that price. So just make sure that you also watch out for that area. So the next one, and last but not least for the AUD pairs, this is the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar. So this is a new entrant on our watch list. So for this one, we'll be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. So hopefully you can end up taking note of those three areas right there. Right now, we're holding within this support region. And you can see that the sellers have really been attempting to break this region to the downside, but they've not really been that successful. So for this one, let's see what happens. There's a possibility we could find the sellers attempting to break to the downside, even as the buyers try to get those much better prices. So for this one, it's not yet quite ready in terms of the buys. Or within a support region, which is good, but you could easily hit the buy here, put stop loss here, but run the risk of getting stopped out. But at least if the sellers, because you can still see that they are quite adamant, let's see what they can do. If they do break to the downside and the buyers are able to push them to the upside of this region, I think at that point, if you try the buy, it might be a bit safer, but you'll still need to watch out for this region here, because you can't see that the sellers have really been giving issues, somewhere around this region. And you can't see every time the market comes in within that region, the sellers always come in. So you just need to watch out for that. But hopefully, if the big boys really do show up, then we should be blasting to the upside of this region, to the upside quite aggressively. If you see that, then you're good. If you get the market coming in slowly and possibly holding within this region here, then at that point in time, you could actually manage your trade. Then when the market breaks above here and pulls back in and actually holds within here, you could actually jump in on another trade within this region here. So that's how I'll actually end up playing on this one. Of course, if the market does end up doing exactly what we've talked about. But also remember the red SNR at the bottom. I mean, price can also come back in there. If the big boys do need that price, then at least we will also be ready for that. So that's pretty much it in terms of the AUD pairs. So right now we're going to move on to the GBP pairs. So we'll start off with the Great British Pound against the US dollar. So for this one, on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. And you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. So Friday morning, price was here. Was expecting to possibly get a bit of a slowdown within here, but you can't see that at exactly 10, the market did actually take off to the upside. Remember, I pointed out that considering the fact that there were these probes right here, it meant that there were definitely buyers who are sitting here. And you can see that during the London session, the buyers pushed to the upside. Then after that, can't see that the sellers reacted, but during the US session, there wasn't really much that was happening on this one. So for this one, for today, the levels are the same. So we're going to be looking at exactly the same areas that we did have. You can see that price has not really gone far and beyond the areas that we had pointed out. Some sort of a range has been forming within this region. So that tells us that the best buying opportunities are definitely down here. So don't chase your buys. I mean, even if you hit the buy here, you don't really have that much room to move to the upside. So the risk to reward is not really worth it. So for this one, you're better off. Either if the market can actually break to the upside, if you can get a proper breach of structure, to the upside of this region, at least you could look for the buys within there. If not, give this region at the top right here the benefit of doubt, because sellers are definitely somewhere within this territory. So you could possibly find that the market could come back in within here. And if it does, at least the proper buying opportunities right now, based on where the price is, are actually down within this region here. So let's see what happens on this one, but also remember the red SNR, in case the market breaks and holds beneath that region to the downside, then unfortunately, there will be no trade for us. So the next one, this is the Great British Pound against the Swiss franc. So for this one on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten buys. And you can't see that the market was here. I was expecting maybe price could have just come back in, somewhere as close as possible within here before looking for the buys. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And you can see that the market pushed to the upside. And you can see that during the US session, price was more or less holding within this region. Some attempts by the buyers to break to the upside, which were unsuccessful. And you can see that today, during the Asian session, the buyers did start to come in. And right now, during the Frankfurt session, they're attempting to break above this region. So the breach seems to be happening. But remember one thing we always point out, after the breach, we always need to wait and see that we can actually end up getting the pullback holding above that region. So this one will need to be a bit more patient because we're not too sure if the market could easily come back into the downside of this region. If that does happen, remember that even on Friday, it did seem like the buyers had broken above this region to the upside, but they just couldn't hold above that region there. So we are not too sure whether it's going to be a repeat of that. So the best thing is to actually wait and see if we can literally get the market coming back in within this region here, and we can read the story of what happens and how the sellers are getting faded and the buyers are still adamant. Then that's a good thing. We could possibly look for the buyers at that point in time. So for this one, I'll be waiting to see whether I can get the pullback coming in. So watch out for that. But of course, remember, a bit of a long shot right there, but it's also a possibility that price can also come back in within that region there. So the next one, this is the Great British Pound against the Canadian dollar. So for this one on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buys, and you can see the three areas that I had pointed out. So Friday morning, price was here. It took off. I was expecting price to come back in here. Unfortunately, did not. Broke to the upside of this region. You can see that the market held and attempted to even go up much higher. But you can see that the spike, it seems that it's something that happened with all the card pairs, because this is something that we've seen on all of them. We did pull back in almost somewhere as close as possible within there, but could have been hard to grab that trade. And you can see that the market came back in within this region, did some sort of a massive probe within this area right here, held to the upside, and you can see that the buyers did again attempt to push to the upside. Of course, if you got the buyers here, you definitely did need to watch out for the highest part, especially where the price did actually end up getting high up until. So for this one, for today, we'll see whether we can get some clear buying opportunities. The ones that were there on Friday were not that clear, but at least the GBPs did move. But it was a bit hard to end up grabbing the opportunities on some of these ones. So let's see what happens on this one today. So these are the three areas we will be watching out for today. Of course, we have that high from Friday that we're watching out for. Right now, considering the fact that the market is coming back in within this region, it's not a good time to look for the buying opportunities. Be a bit patient. Let's see if we can get the market hopefully breaking above this region to the upside. If it does, then we could possibly try and see whether we could get the buys on the pullback. If not, then let's see. I mean, if the sellers do react off this region, and they have reacted before, you can see that the market has reacted off this region. So at least if we can get the market coming back in, somewhere within this area right here, then maybe we could try and see whether we could get some buying opportunities at that point in time. So let's see what happens on this one. But also remember the red SNR at the bottom right there, definitely going to be the last area where we will be trying to see whether we can get our last buying opportunities. So the next one, this is the euro against the Great British Pound. So this is also a currency pair we had on Friday. We're watching out to see whether we could have gotten some sells. And you can see the three regions right here that I had pointed out, or four, because there was also this area that I had pointed out that you could have found that maybe the market could have come back in within this region if it didn't come all the way to within that region. But you can see that the sellers somewhere within this area were able to reverse the market. And you can see that the sellers came in quite aggressively. And this was also part of the illustration that I had put in of what to expect. So the sellers came in aggressive, which was good. You can see that the market held within this region, and you can see that the sellers did actually push the market to the downside. So this was actually a trade that I did actually manage to get, because the rest of the GBPs, I did see them making a move. So this one is the one that I did end up getting. But unfortunately, the market was not really moving that well, because you can't see that there was some extreme choppiness that was going on within this region right here. I mean, the sellers did show up. Then after that, you can see that it's like they kind of slowed down within this region. So I was expecting maybe because the rest of the GBPs were showing strength, then hopefully also this one could have come back, all the way to within here. But did manage to scratch it, of course, at the end of the day, somewhere within this region, somewhere within this area right here. But you can see that today, during the Asian and the Frankfurt session, the market is still coming down, which is okay. I mean, if we do end up getting some sort of a pullback, then definitely we could try and see whether we could jump back in on this one. So the levels on this one are more or less the same. So these are the 3 areas that we'll be watching out for. We take out that region right there. So more or less the same areas that we did have. Right now, the market is coming back in within here. So it's best not to actually end up looking for the sells now. So it's up until either the market breaks to the downside, pulls back in within that region, then we could get a sell coming down, or at least if this region does end up reacting and the buyers do react, I mean, we should give them the benefit of doubt. Then you could easily find that the market could come back in somewhere within this region right here, and you could find that another sell might possibly end up happening off this region here. So watch out for that, but also remember the region at the top. It's a bit of a long shot, but like I always say, you're better off being ready with something and not needing it, rather than needing something when the market comes back in within there and you are not ready for it, and that opportunity does end up you end up missing out on that opportunity. So it's better to be ready. So for this one, this is the Great British Pound against the New Zealand dollar. So this is the last currency pair. So for this one, this is a new entrant on our watch list. We will be trying to see whether we can get some selling opportunities. So hopefully you can end up taking note of these 3 regions right here. So these are the 3 areas we will be trying to see whether we can get our sells. So right now, the market has pulled back within this region. You can see that there was this move that did actually end up happening on Friday during the US session. And you can see that the market has pulled back in somewhere within this region right here. So in terms of the pullback, that's good. The buyers, they're still quite adamant, but we still need to see whether we can get the sellers coming in. So in terms of location, it's perfect, but we still need to see that aggressive seller showing up, because right now, if you look at what's happening here, the sellers are not yet quite in. So location is one thing, but if there is no seller, then that means that this trade could actually either end up holding within this region, and it could end up becoming a bit frustrating, or you could easily find that the market could actually end up moving to the upside. So let's see what the big boys actually end up doing. But of course, these are the 3 areas that we will be watching out to see what does end up happening. So hopefully you've taken note of that, and everything else we've discussed. So that's pretty much it in terms of the currency pairs. For the sake of guys who come in a bit late, feel free to end up taking note of that. And of course, if you've missed out on anything, you also can end up rewatching on our YouTube channel, because this content is also there. So we can move on to the indices and the commodities. So you can see only silver is on the sell side. Everything else is on the buy side. So we'll start off with the NAS 100. So for this one, on Friday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. And you can see the 3 areas right there that I had pointed out, where ideally we should have been trying to see whether we could have gotten our buys, and also areas where we could have managed our trades. Friday morning price was somewhere within here. So you can see that at around 9:30, price was there. We're expecting price to come back in somewhere within this region. You can see that during the London session, the market was in the pullback phase. Then during the US session, the market took off to the upside. And we look at the times at exactly 4:30. That's when the market tapped back in within this region, and you can see that aggressive buying opportunity that came in. In fact, the buyers just went from here straight all the way to the top quite fast, and that definitely tells you that the big boys were definitely waiting for this price somewhere within here. So for this one, for today, the areas are the same. So you can see that price is more or less contained within these 3 regions right here. So let's see what happens. Either the market breaks to the upside of this area here, we get a nice strong breach to the upside, pullback. Maybe you could find that at least even if it breaks during the London session, pulls back during the US session, you could find the market back here, maybe at around 4:30, and you could find that maybe that's when another buy could happen. Alternatively, I mean, if the market holds within this region here, you don't want to be hitting your buying opportunities at a seller's region. So let's wait and see. You could easily find that also on the other hand, during the London session, the market could come back in and you could find that maybe, hopefully, we'll just keep our fingers crossed. Maybe at 4:30 or 3, price could be back here and maybe we could get that buy going up. So let's see what happens. But also remember the red SNR at the bottom, also a region where in case the market does come in within there, then we will be trying to see whether we can also get some buying opportunities within that region there. So the next one, this is the US 30 or the Dow Jones or the WS 30 on MT5. So for this one, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buys. Can't see the 3 regions that I had pointed out in terms of where we're expecting the pullbacks. Friday morning price was here. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the price coming back in within this region here. You can see that the buyers just really showed up within this region. And it's like once the sellers were taken out, the market just pulled back in within there. And you can see that from around 4:30, the market just took off to the upside quite aggressively. And after that, you can see that the next pullbacks are now starting to happen within this region here. So for this one, for today, we're still going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. Let's see if we can get the market hopefully coming back in within here. This one is also a bit of a tricky one, considering the fact that the areas that we're in right now, these are levels that we've never been before. So even trying to map out these regions is a bit tricky because you can see that ever since this chart started, like price has never really been up that high. So we're plotting the levels as we're moving along. Right now, the only point of reference that we have in terms of the high is here. So if the market breaks above this region, we don't know where we're heading, but we'll just have to make sure that we keep following the story of price. But of course, the best thing would be, at least if the market can actually break to the upside of this region, make whatever high, then come back in within here. If we get that buy, then at least we can target that high because that will be our next point of reference. So this could be the first scenario. The second scenario could be, at least considering the fact that this is the high, we know that there are sellers who are sitting there. That's the reason why the market has kind of stagnated within that region. So it means that the big boys are forming some sort of, resistance area within that area. So at least if the market can come back in within here, then at least if we get the buys of this region, maybe during the US session, then at least we can end up targeting higher back within that region there. So let's see what happens on this one. So I guess that's pretty much it in terms of this one, the US 30. So I hope you've taken note of that. So the next one, this is silver. So for silver, this one we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. So hopefully you can end up taking note of that. And also you can see on Friday what did end up happening. So for this one on Friday, price was here. There was this level here that I had pointed out that maybe you could find the market bouncing off this region to the upside, and it did, because I had pointed out either you could find the market breaking to the downside of this region for the sell. So if the market comes back in within this area, then you could look for the sellers. The buyers came up, but the sellers didn't quite show up. But you can't see that today, considering the fact that there was this gap that came in within this region here, we're considering that to be some sort of a big seller who's coming. And right now, considering the fact that the market is coming back in within this region, we need to see what does end up happening within this region, because you could find that maybe if the market can actually come back to the downside of this region here, then at that point in time, we could actually end up still looking for the selling opportunities. Right now, we're not too sure what could actually end up happening. So if the market does actually end up breaking and holding to the upside of this area and actually start to move away from here, then at that point in time, we can actually start to look for the buying opportunities. Remember, when it comes to the indices and the commodities, were fully technical, which means that for as long as we're holding above the red SNR, we should be looking for buys. And if we actually end up breaking and holding to the downside of the red SNR, then we should be looking for sells. So for this one, this is what the plan is going to be looking like. But it's a bit of a catch-22 situation, because also remember, if the market does actually end up coming back in within this region, especially if it does end up attempting to break to the downside and can't, then at that point in time, we'll definitely be trying to see whether we can get those buying opportunities. So hopefully you can end up taking note of that. So last but not least, we do have gold. So for gold, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten sales. The bias was to look for sales on Friday. for as long as we're holding beneath this region. The market came back in within here, but you can't see that the market broke to the upside and actually held. And once that happened, then definitely the buyers did end up shifting. There were some attempts by the sellers to come in. Unfortunately, they couldn't push the market all the way to within here before the buyers came in. And you can see right now, based on what's happening, the buyers are attempting to move up higher. So right now, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get buys. So for as long as we're holding above this region to the upside, then the buyers is definitely to try and see whether we can get those buying opportunities. So right now, the market has broken to the upside, which is okay. But like I pointed out, let's wait and see what happens on the pullback, because you're not too sure whether it could be a probe. If the market comes in and holds to the downside of this here, then there's a possibility price could be coming back in somewhere as close as possible within here. So let's see what happens. If that happens, this could be one scenario. On the other hand, of course, if the market holds above this region to the upside, so right now it has broken, maybe attempts to break to the downside can't, and the market actually holds, then at least at that point in time, you could look for the buys. But my best bet, definitely, I think the best buy is definitely somewhere within here, because also considering the fact that the market is just breaking above here, definitely lots of guys are looking for the buys now. At least if we can get some sort of a pullback coming in, incite the opposite party to come in, then that would definitely be good. So let's see what happens on this one. But also remember the red SNR, for as long as we're holding above, then we should be looking for buys. Also, one thing that's interesting about gold is that we are also kind of back. You know, when we came back into this range where the market had been holding for an extended period of time, we broke to the downside, came back in, didn't hold within here. Right now, it's back in right at the top where the sellers are. And that's why I'm saying that there could be some caution within these regions right here. And you could find that the best buys could technically be somewhere within this region. But I mean, if it does end up coming in low, that's the reason why we also have this area right here, because you could find that maybe the bottom of the range can't see some sort of a probe at the bottom, probe at the top. True SNR could be somewhere within this region. So you just need to be a bit careful. But at least if we can break free, come back in within here, I think those buys after that could definitely not be too bad. So for this one, let's see what happens. But my best bet, once again, like I pointed out, could definitely be somewhere within that region there. So I guess that's pretty much it in terms of everything. So I guess we can look at any questions on the Q&A or any requests. So I'm seeing Claire. Good to see you, Claire. Hope you're well. You're saying good morning. GBPNZD should be a buy, right? Based on the watch list, it should be, unless I did my own things when I was on it. Yeah, you're right. This one should be for a buy. So apologies for that. And thanks, Claire, for that correction. It should be for a buy. I think it's based on the fact that maybe when I was doing the analysis on this one, considering the fact that the market was coming down, it looked like it could have actually been good in terms of looking for the sells based on what happened. So possibly did end up getting a bit carried away on that one, but you're right. So for this one, the buyers should actually go to the upside. We're expecting that strength to come in for the GBP. So hopefully guys can actually end up taking note of that correction. But thank you so much for that, Claire. And I see Isaac there, you're also saying kindly display GBP and ZD for today. I missed out. Yes. So thank you so much for that, Claire. So I guess that's pretty much it. Not really seeing any other question. So I guess everything else should be clear. But if you're struggling in terms of trading, feel free to reach out to us. Our contact details should be there on the chat box. We definitely can see how best we can end up helping you. And of course, if you get any trades today, whether good or bad, feel free to also send them in to us. Skills will definitely be more than happy to give you a shout out and give you the much needed help that you need. So with that, happy trading, guys, and bye for now. Hope we'll see you guys tomorrow. And as always, may the peace be with you. God bless.